talking about some of our holiday season decorations. They may look great, but some of them can also be toxic. Joining us now on the Oakland County MegaCast, Dr. Varun Vohra. He's the academic director and clinical toxicologist for the Michigan Poison Center. Thank you for taking time out of your day to be with us on the MegaCast.
Thank you, Ronnie.
So when I was doing a little bit of research on this topic, I started looking around my house. It can be pretty scary because these are common things, right?
Right.
So tell us, what should we be looking for and be aware of during the holiday season?
Yeah, so I think there are a plethora of things right now, especially with the holiday season, especially with children being potentially exposed to a variety of different things. I mean, the things that are kind of ubiquitous at this time of year, things like food and alcohol, clearly. So with people coming over, and I know COVID has kind of thrown a wrench in that, but grandma and grandpa could be coming over, other extended family members, alcohol, making sure that that is out of the reach of children. And with that, family members who are taking certain medications as well, in their purses and their bags, you want to keep those out of the reach and out of the sight of children. When it comes to actual Christmas themed items like ornaments, toys, lights, those are all things that could be choking hazards to children. You want to make sure that you are vigilant in keeping an eye on them, and even things like bubble lights, things within them contain certain types of solvents, which can be quite toxic if a child were to get that into their mouth. And then other things that are kind of synonymous with this time of year, plants. So holiday plants like poinsettias, mistletoe, even holly. Certain types of plants like those, they can be really irritating to the mouth, to the stomach, especially for a young child. So those are the kinds of things that we want to keep an eye on.
And could those types of things also impact your pets?
Correct. Yeah. Especially the plants, like poinsettias, mistletoe, those things, those kinds of things, you want to keep them out of kind of the reach of dogs and cats, especially since those are, common house pets, but they can be very irritating.
So how does a person know when it's just irritating or when they need to seek emergency care?
I think, typically, how we approach sort of a patient in a triage manner and, gauging how the signs and symptoms, what they're complaining of. And with kids, obviously a lot of them are nonverbal, right? So if they're having trouble breathing, if their mental status is kind of changing, you notice that they're getting kind of either drowsy or just not behaving like they normally do. That's when you want to either call us at the Poison Center, or if it potentially could be life threatening or it's very serious, call 911 immediately.
What is the usual time frame that if someone, puts something or ingests it,
Mhm.
and not the choking hazard, but more like around the plants and things of that nature, is there a time frame that's connected with that?
I mean, definitely within 30 minutes to an hour, I think you'd start definitely seeing at least something, whether it's, the irritation, the swelling, those kind of things will be noticeable. The changes in mental status may vary, but usually we like to say within half an hour to an hour, definitely you'll likely see something.
I'm thinking of parents running
Right,
around and everything gets
right,
kind of crazy and
right,
hairy. It's hard to watch your
right,
little ones during this
correct.
time.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's very difficult. So having people kind of on the lookout that can help you as well, extended family members is hugely important. But yeah, anything can kind of be toxic, right? So especially this time of year with so much going on, you have to be vigilant.
Dr. Vora with us here on the Oakland County MegaCast. He's with the Michigan Poison Center.
Mhm.
Are there other things that we should be looking out for this time of year?
I mean, synonymous with this time of year in terms of the cold weather, heating in the house, carbon monoxide is always kind of a threat. So making sure that you check your batteries and your carbon monoxide detectors regularly. Do not run generators in the house or in the garage. Even if the windows are open, keep that stuff outside, at least 20 feet away from the house. Um, those kinds of things, and keeping an eye on the cooking, the food especially. You want to keep hot food hot, cold food cold. You want to make sure that children's toys, the batteries themselves are within a tightly sealed compartment, because even little things like button batteries, They're very small, they can be ingested, and they're very dangerous because all it takes is an ingestion to close that circuit because they're so small. That can lead to thermal injury and damage to the esophagus and airways. So those kinds of things we're definitely looking out for, and you want to be particularly attentive to.
I know usually around this time of year, they'll come out with a list of toxic toys.
Hmm.
But if you have a child that's 1, 2, 3 years, the
Yeah.
first thing they do, it goes in their mouth.
Right. Right.
So, what is there a list that parents should be looking out for even before they buy the toys, too?
I think not necessarily a list. I think what's most important is making sure that when you do get a toy for your child, inspecting the toy and making sure that all the compartments are in place, that there's no loose ends that are falling off or easily to fall off, and making sure that the toy is intact. I think with everything, with all the precautions being taken this year, you want to make sure that when you do get the toy, wash it off, rinse it off as soon as you get it, making sure that it's sanitary first of all, because you know that the kids are going to get their hands all over it. Things like that you want to pay attention to, but definitely the loose ends and the compartments and the extra sort of accessory parts to toys, you want to make sure that they're all attached and that no part is getting loose, at least very easily.
So, you just brought up a good point. When parents sanitize a toy,
Hmm.
spray it with Lysol or wipe it down,
Hmm.
is there a period that they should wait to let it completely dry before they give it to their kids? Does that pose any problems at all?
I mean, I definitely would not, yeah, I would recommend not giving it to them right after, disinfecting it with, either hand sanitizer or sort of alcohol-based products, because then again, that's introducing another potential toxin, right? So, I mean, waiting an hour, possibly an hour or two before kind of letting it, it's going to dry pretty quickly, but just kind of making sure that it's not an immediate threat by any means, and giving it some time to kind of air out, I think is important.
So, this time of year, especially after the holiday,
Hmm.
that time period in between now and the first of the year, so many
Hmm.
people like to deep clean their homes as well
Right.
and kind of clear them of the clutter, but also, wipe down the showers and do
Hmm.
that deep
Hmm.
cleaning because they have more time. So many
Hmm.
people are on holiday break.
Right.
But are there certain chemicals that they shouldn't mix together if they're going
Yeah.
to be doing cleaning?
Yeah. So, I mean, things like the classic one is kind of mixing toilet bowl cleaner with ammonia. Ammonia-based products are typically used to clean things, and toilet bowl cleaners can contain things like hydrochloric acid. So when those two things mix, it produces a chemical compound called chloramine, which can be very irritating to the sinuses and kind of the upper airway. So you'll notice a lot of irritation. We do get a lot of calls based on those kinds of things. I think nowadays with the hand sanitizers, especially with adults and not to mention children, there's going to be more of that around. There's more children around the house too because of, for a variety of reasons, whether it's being at home during school, or around this time of year. You always want to make sure that those are out of the reach of children, and making sure that none of those kinds of things are ingested as well. Obviously, especially for adults, hand sanitizers for the hands. Um, those kinds of things I think are kind of ubiquitous around this time of year, but definitely the toilet bowl cleaner and the ammonia products, those kinds of things we see a lot of, people mixing it, not knowing, the reaction. So I would pay close attention to that.
The Tide Pods,
Right.
that was a big issue,
Yeah.
I think a couple years ago with
Hmm.
children getting into the Tide Pods. Are you still
Right.
seeing that type of thing?
Yeah, we do from now. Yeah, definitely. The detergent pods, we definitely do see that. Maybe not as much as we did at that one point in time, but it's still always a threat. Again, keeping it's kind of a broken record, right? Keeping it out of the reach of children, because they are attractive, especially with the colors and the shape of them. They're quite small. Making sure that they're out, at a safe distance away from children, and making sure that the compartments are sealed, the bags are sealed, because now they have sort of the child resistant packaging on them as well, which is hugely important. So we do see that from here and there definitely, but maybe not quite as much as we did a year or two ago.
And I know that, the recommendation is
Mhm.
that people should not be gathering right now. Stay
Right.
within your household.
Right.
But we also know people aren't always abiding by those rules and
Yeah.
regulations. And sometimes you have little kids that go over to family and friends' homes and
Hmm.
they're curious and they
Yep.
open cabinet drawers
Yep.
because if you don't have kids, you're not putting child safe locks on everything.
Correct.
And I
Yeah.
just think about, all the different various chemicals and cleaning supplies that are
Hmm.
underneath your sink.
Hmm. You know, those kinds of things, solvents, detergents, they can be hugely irritating and damaging to the airways and to the mouth, the oral area, especially if ingested. They can be very irritating to the eyes, even to the hands. They can sensitize. Certain solvents can be quite sensitizing to the skin. Other things you want to keep in mind, like you mentioned, cabinets, medicine cabinets, making sure that your medications are sealed in child-resistant packaging as they came. And secondly, if they're going to different people's houses, even recreational substances, we've heard a lot about e-cigarettes, liquid, vaping products. Those can be and have been quite popular lately in the last year or two, and can be quite attractive to kids, even young adults, because they're unique products. And they look kind of cool to them. They've had a lot of different flavors as well that can be quite attractive to kids, and they can taste sweet. And it takes just a very little amount of those things to cause potentially life-threatening toxicities. So those are hugely important things that we want to keep away from children and make sure that you are accounting for all those types of products.
Yeah, we haven't heard much about
Hmm.
vaping
Hmm.
once COVID hit.
Right.
Last year and 2 years ago, it was really in the news quite often
Right. Right.
because of the dangers that can be associated with it. But then, of
Hmm.
course, when you're in the middle of a new crisis,
Right.
some of these issues may not be making headlines,
Hmm.
but they're still out there.
Right.
And with that, during this crisis, are you seeing anything different because, more and more kids are at home by themselves, especially teenagers?
Yeah, I mean, as we've seen kind of, nationally, the rates of overdose are going up, whether it's unintentional or intentional, because of the variety, sort of the downstream effects of COVID, whether it be, social, psychological. Those are certainly um, increasing. I think there have been more exposures to contaminated hand sanitizers that as we've seen in the news with, methanol, which is a kind of alcohol being added as a replacement for ethanol or isopropyl alcohol into these sanitizers, and that can be very toxic. Even though ethanol and isopropyl themselves can be toxic when ingested, methanol has a unique different type of toxicity which can be quite devastating. So those are the kinds of things that we pay attention to. Recreational products, again, the vaping, whether it's liquid nicotine or even now concentrated THC. So in normally, what we normally synonymously know THC as being is, marijuana that you smoke normally in a joint or some type of pipe. Um, the concentrations vary between anywhere between 5 and 25% of THC, whereas these newer products, they can be up to 95% THC, which can be devastating, especially to younger adults and especially kids. So we want to stay away from that as much as possible. The liquid nicotine, same sort of principle. They're highly concentrated products, so it doesn't take that much to cause toxicity. And you could see it's a big vomit toxin that we call it. So it causes a lot of vomiting, especially initially. But with increasing exposures, you can see life-threatening symptoms like seizures and even breathing problems. So very, very hugely important to keep tabs on.
Parents really need to be paying attention.
Right.
I know it can be
Right.
hard for them, but your kids are home so much more
Correct.
right now. And so Dr. Vohra with us here, he's with the Michigan Poison Center, also an assistant professor with the Wayne State University School of Medicine, Department of Emergency Medicine. Just another minute or two here with
Hmm.
you on the MegaCast. Before we let you go, anything else that maybe we didn't ask or touch on that our viewers and listeners could benefit from?
I think above all, with gatherings, obviously the normal COVID sort of procedures and actions in terms of making sure that you're social distancing, keeping your masks on, but with that, with more people getting together, Again, it's going to sound like a broken record. Keep the tabs on the alcohol, keep them away from children, keep your medicines and your recreational substances away from them as well. Making sure that, if you do have sort of holiday plants and things of that nature, making sure that they're, not really on the ground, and maybe that they're on an elevated space where they're away from children, even pets as well. And then beyond that, this time of year, regardless of the holidays in the wintertime, making sure that you are getting your carbon monoxide detectors inspected annually, making sure that the batteries are working, properly, and that you're inspecting them regularly. Keep generators out of the house and in the garage. Keep them outside of the house at all times. And then beyond that, the cleaning supplies, again, like we mentioned, keeping them stored safely, tightly away from children, and making sure not to mix certain chemicals together. And if you are unclear, give us a call. The Poison Center is not just here for calls when people are exposed to certain things. We're here for when people have any types of questions as well. So if you're uncertain at all, just give us a call. We're open 24/7, 365. And on top of that, follow us on social media. We're all over, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You just type in @MichiganPoison. Our website is mipoisonhelp.org. All this type of information that I've already, stated, it's all clearly laid out in there, as well as our outreach campaigns as well in our flyers and whatnot. So for more information, just don't hesitate to let us know or give us a visit on those platforms.
So before we let you go, if me or someone else is experiencing something, once you call 911, should they also call your center as well to try to get additional information in those minutes in between?
I mean, if you call, it wouldn't hurt. I mean, but I think if there's any doubt or any uncertainty that this could be life-threatening or it's a very serious exposure, call 911. That's going to be your best bet, because if you call us, we are going to recommend that you be taken to a hospital or call 911 anyways, right? So the first things first is that you want to maintain priority of your own health, or whoever is exposed that you're around. And then on top of that, typically once they do arrive to a hospital, we get called anyways from the healthcare professionals in the emergency department. So we will be likely made aware of it regardless. But first things first, if there's any doubt, call 911.
Well, we so appreciate your time and very valuable and important information as well, because, we all kind of get relaxed around this time of year. And while we know these things, they're in the back of our mind.
Right.
It can be, pretty easy to not take the precautions, but it really is an important reminder. So we appreciate your time.
Thank you. Happy holidays.